ZZZ Zone Zero is now deep into its launch version, and I think it's time we start making comparisons. I think we should compare the market as is. Why would you play this game right now versus this game right now? Obviously, games that have tenure are going to have some advantages. Games that are new are going to have some advantages. And so I think it's fair to weigh both of them as they are. So in this video, I'll be doing that exact thing. Needless to say, games that are like 4, 5 years old, it's really hard to compare those because those kind of pioneered the game space that we have now for gacha games. For example, it's like when people make that sports comparison of Michael Jordan versus Kobe Bryant versus LeBron James versus some dude in the 80s, it's just hard to compare because without those people in the beginning, the game wouldn't be what it was now. And obviously, as the challenge arises, those people that play now on average are going to be people that are better than people that were on average playing back then. That's because you have to rise to the challenge. And that's the same thing with games. When we look at the market of games, we have to compare them now, and they have to rise to the challenge of all the other games on the market. I will be making some comparisons of the launch versions of the games and current state of the games, but mostly focusing on the current state of all 3 games that we're talking about in the video. Those 3 games I would like to call the big 3 of gacha games right now, and that is Honkai Star Rail, ZZZ Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves. Now obviously there's other gacha games that people play that are popular, like Epic 7, Blue Archive, Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact III. Those are all big games, but I don't play those games, so I'm not going to compare them. I've played all those games at least a little bit, but not enough to have deep knowledge like I do with these other games. And we're going to talk about the current game state of those games and how I feel about them. Why? Because my opinion is the most important. If you don't play any of these games, I will do my best in this video to explain why or why you should not play them. Let's get started. Combat. Wuthering Waves and ZZZ Zone Zero have a beautiful combat system that is fast, action-based, while Honkai Star Rail is turn-based combat. There are 2 major factors in combat for games, and that is how it looks and how it sounds. Both of these are big factors in how the game feels, along with the fluidity of movement and the reactivity of the inputs. Turn-based games don't really have fluidity and input reactivity, so it's hard to compare that in this aspect. So we'll mostly be focusing on how the combat looks and sounds. I think Honkai Star Rail has some of the best visuals when it comes to combat. That's because that's all the combat really has aside from the sound effects of the combat. The visuals are so beautiful, and I think that the execution of them are amazing. If the execution doesn't look amazing, I would say it's a waste of time, like a non-visual D&D game. You say sentences of what's happening and get stats and reaction. You know, it's like when you play Pokemon on like an old console, nothing really happens on the screen much, but you know things are happening because it tells you. That's not why we play these games. We play these games for the visuals. So, visuals-wise, Honkai Star Rail's magnifique. ZZZ Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves have team-based combat. And just calling it team-based combat would be an understatement because on-field, off-field is very synergetic in both of these games because of how they're designed. You know, other games pioneered this, Genshin Impact, where your team composition is super important when it comes to these kinds of action-based games, but I will say that these 2 games are pioneering a new type of synergy when it comes to team-based combat. ZZZ Zone Zero has that synergy system where as long as you're, constantly getting those perfect blocks or parries, you're going to be dropping ultimate abilities basically every time you switch a character in, and you don't have a choice, which makes it so that you can't just put somebody on and not use them versus other games where you can just have them, drop them, and put them away. I like the idea that you have to use all the characters in your team. That makes it really fun. Wuthering Waves, on the other hand, has pioneered the swap canceling mechanic, which is something that is somewhat used in other games. Like, there's very faint swap canceling in other games, but it is a big deal in Wuthering Waves, and I think that that's what gives this advantage when it comes to like the actual fluidity of combat. Swap canceling has been like the funnest thing for me just because of the idea of the dynamics of each character's combat movements. For example, Gian. He's got super cool moves that are super elaborate and big, and things that he does in the sky, things that he does on the ground, that makes it so that when you're swap canceling and you're having your team switch in and out, it is so much fun to see how, your team is all over the place fighting the same thing basically at the same time. That is super, super beautiful. Also, I think jumping does give a combat advantage versus ZZZ Zone Zero. You can't jump in that game, and that's super weird. I get it, you don't really need to, but I feel like if you could jump, it would just make it feel a little bit smoother. I don't know why. I don't know. As far as the sound goes, I think Wuthering Waves has it for sound. The parry system in that game and the gratification for parrying is so much better than Zenless Zone Zero, just because Zenless Zone Zero makes it really easy to parry in my opinion. The game is theoretically easier than Wuthering Waves. I think that Wuthering Waves' intensity and sound effects make it so much more fulfilling sound-wise to play that game. I think they've done a phenomenal job with the sound design of combat. Honkai Star Rail also has really good sound design. I think Honkai Star Rail sound design is really good too, but honestly I don't think about it too much. The visuals are so captivating and the sound isn't that stunning to where it really draws me out of it. I think with action-based combat I'm more focused on the sound effects than anything. One thing that comes to mind specifically with Guinaifen is when you use her ultimate ability, she hits the bell, ding ding ding, and gets your attention. I really like that kind of stuff too. Combat so far, super good. I will say this though, Zenless Zone Zero does have my favorite animations of ultimates in the games. I really like the ults in HSR, don't get me wrong, but I like the impact frames. I like how nice the ults look. I think they just look better than Wuthering Waves in my opinion, and I stand by it. I just think it looks better. There's no real explanation aside from that. Impact frames look nice to me. I like it. Get over it. Conclusion for combat. I will say Wuthering Waves has my favorite combat of the three games right now. Zenless Zone Zero and HSR I would say are tied, just because they're different and it's hard to compare the three, I realize, but I would say I enjoy those combats about the same amount, including the fatigue of the time that I have playing the game. I think if you really love turn-based games and you can play them forever, HSR is obviously going to be the choice, but Zenless Zone Zero right now I really love too, and I want to go on record, no matter where I place these games, they're my three favorite gacha games at the moment. I still enjoy them. World design. Now, world design is something very important to me. Very three times because it's in the Zone Zero, 3Zs. It's very important. I think that the aesthetic of Zenless Zone Zero takes the cake. I would describe the aesthetic of Zenless Zone Zero as like one of those middle school binders that got sticker bombed, but it wasn't done cringe. It's like cool sticker bombing, you know what I'm saying? Tastefully sticker bombed. And then like that metro, you know, like Japanese punk fashion of like city pop feel. I love that. I love that aesthetic and it's done so well in the game. That makes it so it kind of just overall is my favorite aesthetic. Tin Master is also a really cool character in the game. I love Coffee. I love that character. He walks around like Comethazine, you know what I'm saying? Comethazine's a rapper. Wuthering Waves world, it has like a dark twisted feel to it, and I think that is mostly because of its color palette. The areas feel different and unique but have the same aesthetic overall. I would say a lot of games try to have like diverse places and have super diverse world design, and it makes it kind of feel all over the place, and sometimes it isn't properly executed. I think that this is a great example of a game that's stuck to a color palette, stuck to a world design, and it makes sense. Even with the new region we went into, it still feels like it fits in the same world, even if it is slightly different. I think Honkai Star Rail does a great job with how far it's developed with different world designs. I think with the conclusion of Pinacone, when we're moving into the next region, which apparently is going back to the Luofu, I'm just excited to see where they go with it, because I think that they've properly executed like Belobog, Luofu, and Pinacone in such a good way. I think that the next region that we go to is going to be really nice. I will say I was excited at the end of Pinacone to get out of there. It felt kind of corny after a while, but that's just personal opinion. I really liked the aesthetic at first, but it felt like, I don't know, I just didn't like it as much. I'm one of those classic, you know, gacha game players where I want like Japanese aesthetic, or I want like, you know, Chinese aesthetic specifically, and I like the idea of exploring outside of that. I like the idea of going to like other kinds of, you know, countries and cultures. I do like that, but I for some reason just got tired of Pinacone, even though I was really excited about it and I think about it fondly in the past. I will say it was a 9 out of 10 for me. Like the region of Pinacone was a 9 out of 10. With the three games being in the state that they're in, I would still say that world design wise, I like Zenless Zone Zero's world design the best. But Wuthering Waves does have an advantage of it being an open world, and being an open world and having the experience of exploration does give a large advantage. There's instances of Zenless Zone Zero and HSR that make it so it's like hard to compare an open world game to it, because you've got instance-based combat, then you also have instance-based exploration. It's not just one seamless world like Wuthering Waves is for the most part, so I think it's really hard to make that comparison, but I will say the open world aspect does give it an advantage for me me on world design, but the aesthetic overall goes to Zenless Zone Zero. So I would say first place is tied with WuWa and ZZZ, and then HSR just gets second place because it's just not quite as fulfilling for me. And who knows, maybe in the future I will be super happy about it. I think the color palette's beautiful in HSR. I love playing that game. It's super satisfying, but I got doled out with Pinacone. And I think when we go into the next region, I'll be very happy. Seeing like the nihility visuals from Acheron made me really feel like super, oh, I love that aesthetic, but it's just not as enjoyable of a world design to me. You have to keep this in mind. I've been playing HSR since launch, so when I look at HSR, my mind is nulled to the excitement of it because I've seen it for so long. Seeing these games are newer, it makes it a little hard to compare that. Who cares though? I'm still comparing it. HSR, second place, WuWa, ZZZ, better, in my opinion. Mobs. WuWa falls slightly behind on this, in my opinion. I love the mobs in the game, but I think the corruption aesthetic takes away from the creativity of the creatures in the game. For example, I love the bosses specifically because they're unique creatures. They're not like, oh, they are like turtle. I feel like the oh, nice corrupted car, that's a corrupted turtle. I feel like those things are like super simple for me, and it takes away from the creativity of, you know, making a creature from scratch. But making a creature from scratch isn't always required to make good mobs in a game. I think diversity of mobs is important, but it feels like if we're fighting similar looking creatures over and over, it's a little dry. And I realize the game is still early in, like, you know, exploration wise and in development, so we're always going to have that. And I don't think changing the element of the creature exactly changes the aesthetic of it either. It just changes the element. I like intricate designs, but I also like bright colored things. So Zenless Zone Zero does have an advantage because of how bright the mobs are and how unique they look. They're like, most of them are ground up designs, it feels like, and they're unique. Honkai Star Rail though, they've had so much time. I think they win in the idea of the diversity of mobs and the creativity of mobs. Again, looking at Pinacone, looking at Bellabog, looking at all of the areas we've been in Honkai Star Rail, they have done a great job with creativity and vibrance. That's something I really enjoy. I think they're awesome. Now I want to justify a little bit of what I was saying about Wuthering Waves. I think that the mobs are vibrant. I think that they are cool, but the color palette dulls kind of the experience of looking at them. I think there is a couple mobs in Wuthering Waves that are better than like all the other mobs in the other games, just hands down. I can't think of their names exactly, but the heron, I really love the bird. I really love like Thundering Methus. Like those creatures are so cool looking, bro. Like I just really like how they look. Super important to me too, especially if I'm fighting them all the time. I want them to look nice. Honkai Star Rail had so much time with like the creatures of sound and like the monkey that we fought in Pinacone to like, you know, the monkey that we fought in Luofu to the monkey we fought in Bellabog. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like there's just so much diversity in design. I really like HSR. So for this category, I'm gonna say Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, then Wuthering Waves. Story. I don't even want to talk about this because of how intricate it can be, but my answer is going to be my answer, and it's going to be right, and you could argue with it if you'd like in the comments down below. Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves. It is what it is. It's as simple as can be. I put it in this order simply put because of interest, ease of understanding, balanced with complexity. So if the story is boring, but it's like easy to understand and complex, but it's boring, then it's not good. But all three of those things balanced well together is why I put it in that. And I think Honkai Star Rail balances it well. You lost me a little bit towards the end of Pinacone, but I was recovered. Hard to compare this because it's early in the game. Units in the game. Now, this one's a little bit more intricate because this is like the most important thing in my opinion. I think units in the game is the most important thing. They comprise the combat. They comprise the story. They're comprised of all the other things that we talked about before. The mobs, how they interact with them. There's so much involved with character design that it really makes it hard to do a direct comparison without looking at each unit individually, which, hey, we might do. We might do counterpart video. If you want to see that, comment down below. But yeah, I think with looking at the characters, there is a word that I want to talk about. Anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is something super important when we think about fictional characters and when we think about characters that are animals as well. So like cat girls, you know, dog people, whatever you want to call them, fox people. When we look at these kinds of creatures, I think anthropomorphism is really important because it's more reverse anthropomorphism. And when you put that into Google, I know, getting real nerdy here. When you put that into Google, you get dehumanizing. So dehumanizing is what it is to make animals people, or rather people into animals. And so what I'm trying to get at here, everyone talks about the unrealistic expectations of fictional characters and how they affect our mind when we see people in real life, how it's so prevalent in the game space of gacha games and anime games that when you look at these characters and you identify them as being something that isn't, and they try to humanize those kinds of characters and mentalities, or, you know, again, I'm just gonna go straight into it. The Lycan, right? The dog man in the game, or Ben, the bear in Zenless Zone Zero. These are animal people that, if an animal was a person, what kind of personality would they have? I think that that's a really complicated idea that I could even break down in another video, which I might do. But I think that that is a big variable, and the more you do that, the more you run the risk. And I think Zenless Zone Zero as a whole does big risks with their characters. Like having a bunch of little girls in the game, having animal people in the game, those things are risky to do. I will say this, story is imperative to if I like a character or not. Koglia, Bellabog, whatever her name is, the girl with the hammers that's explosive that runs the corporation in Zenless Zone Zero, her story mission made me like her a lot more. I thought she was cool. I think she's awesome now. She's one of those little girl characters, but she's not hypersexualized, and I think that that's nice, because sexualizing little girls is just awful. My favorite unit in Honkai Star Rail is Imbibitor Lune because of how cool his story mission was. I really like Blade also because of that. Their viability is going down, but they are some of my favorite characters because of their story missions, not because of combat alone. Blade's combat also is really, really fun. Again, I think HSR takes this one because of their proof in the pudding, because of the time that they put in. You can tell by looking at the units and the character list that they have diversity in their characters. They've put effort into that, and as you look at all of them, they're not all the same. They're not all the same tropes. There's barely anybody of the same kind of trope or the same kind of character in the game, in my opinion. So I really think HSR gets it when it comes to mechanics, gameplay, design. They're on top of it. Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero being so early into their, their release, I think that they're still trying to prove themselves with their characters. I think Wuthering Waves is doing a great job. Zenless Zone Zero also doing pretty good, but again, they're going more experimental. It's very, very interesting, but I really like Zenless Zone Zero. I love that game so far, and I think the character design is really nice, besides all the little girls. Dude, for the love of the West and the appreciation for us, please just stop with the amount of little girl characters dressed in scantily clad clothes. Like, it's just so annoying. I understand culture, people, yeah, whatever, bro. Just make another costume option or something. Give every character 2 changes of clothes so we can just dress them normally. Or maybe just make them adults, bro. Just make them adults, bro. Like I can't. I don't know. It's just preference here. It's just me talking. It's my video. I'm allowed to have my preference. Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero. That's my list. Lastly, the soundtrack. If you've played these games, you can agree that Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero both have amazing soundtracks. They've done a phenomenal job. And again, this is Hoyoverse. That's why the soundtrack is so amazing. I would like to attest. They do put quality assurance in their audio. Honestly, I gotta give it to Zenless Zone Zero for the consistency in delivery of the music. The consistency in the music is banging. Everywhere you go, there's always music that fits the aesthetic. There's diversity in the music. It's nice. It fits the vibe super well. I love it. I think Zenless Zone Zero takes the cake for that. Honkai Star Rail is close, but it takes the cake. And I didn't even know Wuthering Waves had music in the game for a couple weeks after launch. It's good. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, even after the issue they had with the audio. It's good. It doesn't hit the same for me. It just doesn't hit the same for me. Okay, correction. I actually really like the music in Wuthering Waves. After I recorded this, I played it for a while to get some footage, and the music was slapping. I was having a great time. I was being hard on it because at launch, the music just wasn't there because of whatever patch they had where the music was just silent. And that kind of dampened the initial experience. But yeah, no, the music in Wuthering Waves is bussin'. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on record. I think it's up there with HSR, if not better than HSR. So I'm going to do a new correction here. Put Zenless on top still, Wuthering Waves close behind, and HSR close behind as well, but they're tied. Now, this is my opinion, and it's very important that you know that I am right, but as time passes, we will see more from these games, and my opinion will grow and change, and I might change my mind. It's healthy to do that, and I do it very often, but none of these games are strictly better than the other. It is all preference, and I want you to know that. It's very important to realize if you think that the combat's better in Wuthering Waves than Zenless Zone Zero, that's okay. The game can still be more fun to play Zenless Zone Zero, even if the combat is better. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Mine is just right. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you like me, subscribe. But until next time, I love you guys. I'm out. Peace. One thing you guys might have noticed in this video, I don't have a big crane arm in front of me. I did set up the new microphone, so if the audio sounds a little crazy, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get it all down. I want to get back into gacha games, talking about the games that I used to love and the games that I still enjoy very much, but I've kind of taken a step away from them just because of my lostness in the community. Sometimes when I look at content creators that are making videos about gacha games, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Right? I don't want to do what they're doing for success. That's just not my cup of tea. And a lot of the times there's just like drama going on. And I was trying to do the Ludwig yoink and twist because he made a great video on how to like make content. And there was nothing I wanted to yoink and there's nothing I was wanting to twist. So I was just making Elden Ring videos. I was just kind of doing my thing. But I think I'm going to make videos about gacha games here and there a little bit, depending on how I feel. Who knows? But I think this video was kind of my step back into it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this part on the end, make sure to comment. If you made it to the end of the video, comment. Thank you.